So I just bought this vintage Shelley jack. This one's from an Austin Healey, but they made car jacks for lots of car companies, including Aston Martin. This one's a bit rusty, and it's going to need some of my special treatment. We'll get to the reason why I bought it later in the video. As usual with these things, there's no manual, so I just have to experiment in how to take them apart. So I started with this C-clip, C-ring, and started to unscrew the main screw up through the casting. So that didn't work. It looks like it screws down through the casting, and it's all held in place by the pinned over end of the smaller of the two screws. So I took an end mill to the peening, and it came right off and revealed this squared off end to the smaller internal screw. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. The smaller screw now can screw down out through the larger screw, and the larger screw can screw down out through the bottom of the crown gear. Well, it would if they hadn't done this to the last thread. I'm assuming it's done at the factory and not some accidental damage. I just took a diamond wheel to it and cut off that little bit of a knob, and now it screws out through the crown gear, just as I'd planned. I found that the thrust bearing inside the crown gear was pretty well worn through, but it'll still serve its purpose. And now it's completely apart, I can give everything a good wire wheeling and a proper degreasing. Since I've milled off that pinned over end, I've decided to fix it by drilling and tapping and making a plug for the top of the jack. And this is me making the plug, just turning down the material to the right diameter and putting a counterbore in it, parting it off to the correct depth, catching it on my little brass catcher, and a trial fit, and the screw fits perfectly. And here are all the parts together, just as a trial fit. With everything wire wheeled and degreased, it's time for some paint. And you'll notice that I've even run the foot of the jack on the belt sander to make it completely flat and get rid of all that rust. It would seem that the purpose of this C-clip is as an anti-rotation device, but the only thing holding it in place was the rust. So I had to do a little welding modification. Now you can see how it runs up and down inside the casting. And here are the parts, all freshly painted and looking nice and shiny, and it's all ready for assembly. I've even managed to find 2 new domed screws for the faceplate. Well, one was originally missing anyway. This is where the thrust bearing sits, although the parts of the thrust bearing actually go up inside the crown gear. The crown gear has to go up under the lip of the main casting before I can start to thread in the larger of the 2 screws. At this stage I can put the pinion in, with a little bit of pink grease of course, and that is held in place with the faceplate. And finally the top of the jack can go on and held in place with my new plug and screw. And this is it finished, all together and working again. Now I can hear you asking, what's goes with the car jack, Bob? That's a bit random, isn't it? Well, let's go back to the Centec mill that I've just renovated. To raise the knee, you have to reach over to the back and pull down on this handle like a slot machine. And this transfers via a shaft through the main casting to a rack inside the knee. Now, it's a royal pain reaching over to the back of the machine just to raise the knee, and let's say it's not the most accurate means of raising it. So, with a little lateral thinking, I started hunting for a small car jack. And here it is under the knee, and that's why I used the familiar paint scheme. And as luck would have it, it even straddles the lead screw. Now, it wouldn't be practical for me to use a jack handle, it didn't even come with one anyway, so I've decided to use this smaller hand wheel to make the adjustments on the jack. Now, I had some 1/2 inch square stock to make the shaft out of, but the hole in the jack seems to be a metric 1/2 inch because I've had to grind the sides down a bit to make it fit. Here I'm using a horizontal mill just to reduce that shaft down a bit to fit the square hole in the middle of the handle. I'll not bore you with the drilling and the tapping, but basically I fitted a screw into it just to hold the handle on, and here's how far it sits into the jack itself. Now I can remove that horrible handle at the back and control all the knee raising from the front. And with the very nature of the screw on the jack, I can get very, very accurate adjustments. Well, thank you for listening to this new format, and hope you liked it. Just let me know. And thanks for watching.